Commander Zorath stared at Danny through the view screen with eyes that had seen too much in the past hour. His fleet was destroyed. His invasion was over. The greatest military force the Valori Empire had ever assembled was now nothing more than drifting metal waiting to be salvaged. Danny did not feel triumphant. He felt tired and sad and strangely empty. Victory had come at a cost he was still trying to understand. "What do you want?" Zorath asked. His voice carried no aggression. Only defeat. Danny thought carefully before responding. He could demand surrender. He could threaten to destroy the remaining ships. He could force the Valori to retreat and never return. Guardian had given him the power to do anything, but power was not the same as wisdom. The people who built Guardian had understood that. Now Danny understood it too. "I want to send a message," he said finally. "Not to you. To your empire. To everyone who follows your orders and believes that conquest is the only path to greatness." Zorath nodded slowly. "I am listening." Danny stood up from the captain's chair and faced the screen directly. Lisa adjusted the transmission settings so the message would broadcast to every ship in the disabled fleet. Every Valori soldier would hear what was about to say. "My name is Danny Cole. I am a salvage captain from Earth. 3 hours ago, I discovered this ship by accident. I did not know what it was. I did not know what it could do. But now I understand why my ancestors built it and why they chose to hide it away." He paused and gathered his thoughts. 700 years ago, humanity was alone in the universe. We were afraid. We believed that aliens would find us and try to destroy us. So we built weapons. Terrible weapons. Weapons that could crush fleets and sterilize planets and end civilizations. We built them because fear told us we had no other choice. Lisa watched Danny speak with growing admiration. He was not a soldier or a diplomat. He was just a man who salvaged ships for a living. But he was speaking from the heart, and every word carried weight. "But then something changed," Danny continued. "We realized that our fear was making us into the monsters we were afraid of. We looked at what we had built, and we felt ashamed. So we hid our weapons in the darkness. We hoped we would never need them. We chose to meet the galaxy with open hands instead of clenched fists." Commander Zorath listened without interrupting. His officers had stopped working and were watching the screen in silence. "Your empire has conquered 12 species. You have destroyed worlds and ended civilizations. You believe that power is all that matters. But today you learned something important. There is always something more powerful. There is always a bigger weapon. And if power is all you believe in, then eventually you will meet something that has more of it." Danny gestured at the view screen showing the disabled fleet. "I could have destroyed you. Guardian could have killed every soldier in your armada. But we chose not to. Do you understand why?" Zorath shook his head slowly. "Because mercy is not weakness. Compassion is not defeat. My ancestors built this ship to protect humanity. But the greatest protection is not walls or weapons or shields. It is choosing to be better than our fears. It is proving that we deserve to survive because of who we are, and not just because of what we can destroy." Kira wiped tears from her eyes. She had never heard anyone speak like this before. Danny was not threatening the Valori. He was teaching them. "I am going to release your fleet," Danny said. "Your ships will be repaired. Your soldiers will go home to their families. And you will carry this message back to your empire. Tell them what you saw today. Tell them that humanity built the most powerful weapon in the galaxy, and then chose to hide it because we wanted to be more than conquerors. Tell them that we showed you mercy when we had every right to show you destruction." Commander Zorath was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, softer, almost humble. "Why? Why would you let us go? We came here to invade your territory. We would have killed you without hesitation. Danny smiled sadly. I know, and that is exactly why I have to let you go. If I destroy you, I prove that violence is the only answer. But if I show you mercy, I prove that there is another way. Maybe you will not change. Maybe your empire will send another fleet. But maybe some of your soldiers will remember today. Maybe they will ask questions. Maybe they will start to wonder if conquest is really the only path. Guardian spoke for the first time since the battle ended. Fleet Commander Zorath, I am designed to protect humanity. But protection does not only mean destruction of threats. It also means teaching others that coexistence is possible. Your empire has chosen violence because you believed it was the only option. Today you have seen that it is not. What you do with this knowledge is your choice. Zorath bowed his head. He had entered this battle as a conqueror. He was leaving it as a student. The lesson had been painful, but it was one he would never forget. I will deliver your message, he said quietly. I cannot promise that my emperor will listen, but I will try. The communication ended. Danny slumped back into his chair, exhausted. Lisa walked over and put a hand on his shoulder. Kira joined them at the center of the bridge. What happens now? Lisa asked. Guardian answered. Concord relief vessels will arrive in approximately 6 hours. They have detected the energy signatures from the battle and are investigating. You will need to explain my existence to your leaders. Danny nodded. That would be a difficult conversation. The Concord had no idea that Pathfinder 1 existed. They would want to study Guardian. They would want to use the ship as a weapon against future threats. Danny was not sure he wanted to allow that. Guardian, he said slowly, what do you want? You have been asleep for 700 years. You just saved our lives and defeated an entire fleet. Do you want to stay active? Do you want to help us? The AI considered the question. I want what my creators wanted. I want humanity to be safe. But I also want humanity to be worthy of safety. Your ancestors hid me because they feared I would corrupt your species. I believe they were right to be cautious. Power like mine should be a last resort and not a first option. Kira stepped forward. Then go back to sleep. We will hide you again. We will make sure nobody finds you unless humanity truly needs you. Danny looked at his young crew member with surprise. It was a bold suggestion. It was also the right one. She is correct, Guardian agreed. I should return to dormancy. My presence would change the balance of power in your galaxy. Other species would fear you. Your own leaders might become tyrants. It is better if I remain hidden until I am truly needed. Lisa smiled for the first time since the battle. The Valori will tell everyone what happened here. They will say that humanity has a secret weapon beyond anything in the galaxy. That rumor alone will protect us. Danny understood. The legend of Guardian would be more valuable than Guardian itself. The fear of what humanity could unleash would keep enemies at bay. But the weapon would remain hidden so that humanity would not be tempted to use it. It was exactly what his ancestors had intended 7 centuries ago. Kira, Danny said, someone needs to know where Guardian is hidden. Someone needs to be the keeper of this secret. Would you be willing? Kira nodded without hesitation. I will do it. I will make sure Guardian sleeps until humanity truly needs protection. The ancient AI seemed pleased. I would welcome you as my keeper. You have a good heart. You asked me to show mercy when destruction would have been easier. That is the kind of human I was built to protect. 3 years later, historians still debated whether the Battle of the Debris Field had actually happened. The Valori Empire had withdrawn from Concord borders and signed a peace treaty. Commander Zorath had retired and written a book about the importance of mercy in warfare. Nobody believed his account of an ancient, human prototype that could defeat entire fleets. Danny Cole returned to his salvage work. He never spoke publicly about what happened that day. Lisa Tran joined the Concord Diplomatic Corps, where she helped negotiate treaties with former enemy species. They both knew the truth, but understood why it had to remain secret. Kira Webb disappeared from public life. Official records said she had joined a deep space exploration mission. In reality, she lived aboard Pathfinder 1 in a hidden corner of the galaxy. She spent her days talking to Guardian and learning the history of humanity's darkest and most hopeful creation. And in the endless darkness of Space Guardian slept. Its systems hummed quietly. Its sensors watched the stars. It was patient. It had waited 700 years already. It could wait 700 more. But if humanity ever faced true extinction, Guardian would wake. The prototype that Earth had left behind would rise again. And mercy would always be offered before destruction. That was the promise of humanity's greatest weapon. That was the legacy of a terrified species that chose to become something better than their fears. Guardian remembered everything. And Guardian never forgot. The first wave of Velori warships opened fire at exactly noon by ship time. 300 vessels unleashed their plasma, cannons and missile batteries at Pathfinder 1. The space around the ancient human vessel turned into a storm of deadly energy and explosions. Danny gripped the armrests of the captain's chair as the ship shook slightly. He expected to die in the first seconds. Instead, he watched the view screen in amazement as every attack was absorbed by an invisible barrier around the hull. Probability shields are holding at full capacity, Guardian reported calmly. Enemy weapons are being redirected into empty space. No damage sustained. Lisa studied the shield readings on her console. The technology was beyond anything she had ever seen. The shields did not block attacks directly. Instead, they altered the probability of the weapons actually hitting the ship. Missiles veered off course at the last second. Energy beams bent around the hull as if repelled by an unseen force. It was impossible by every law of physics she knew. But it was working. Kira watched the Velori fleet on the tactical display. Hundreds of ships were firing constantly, but nothing was getting through. The ancient prototype floated serenely in the middle of the firestorm. It looked almost peaceful. Commander Zorath observed the battle from his flagship with growing frustration. His weapons were useless. Every shot missed or deflected harmlessly. His officers reported that their targeting systems were functioning perfectly, but the weapons simply refused to hit the target. All ships concentrate fire, he ordered. Overwhelm their defenses. The entire fleet focused on Pathfinder 1. Thousands of weapons fired simultaneously. The space around the ancient ship became a solid wall of destruction. Any normal vessel would have been vaporized instantly. Pathfinder 1 was not a normal vessel. Guardian, Danny said quietly. Can we survive this? Yes. Current attack intensity is well within shield parameters. However, I recommend we begin disabling enemy vessels now. Each ship that continues firing increases the statistical possibility of shield penetration. I request authorization for offensive operations. Danny hesitated. Offensive operations meant attacking. It meant possibly killing thousands of Velori soldiers who were just following orders. Can you disable them without killing anyone? I will make every effort to preserve life. However, some casualties may be unavoidable. The enemy is using their ships as weapons. Disabling those weapons may result in collateral damage to crew compartments. I estimate a casualty rate of approximately 3%. 3% of 10,000 ships meant hundreds of deaths. Danny felt sick. But the alternative was dying here along with Lisa and Kira. The Velori would not show them mercy. Do it, he said. Disable as many as you can. Minimize casualties. Guardian acknowledged the order. Pathfinder 1 began to move. The ancient ship accelerated to speeds that should have torn it apart. It weaved through the Velori formation like a dancer moving through a crowd. Gravity beams lanced out and struck warship after warship. Each vessel hit by the beams stopped dead. Their power cores failed and their weapons went silent and their engines died. Lisa tracked the battle statistics. In the first minute, Guardian disabled 47 ships. In the second minute, 73 more went dark. By the fifth minute, the number of disabled vessels had passed 200. The Velori fleet broke formation and tried to scatter. It did not help. Pathfinder 1 moved faster than their sensors could track. It appeared behind ships and beside ships and above ships without warning. Every gravity beam found its target. Every shot was perfect. Zoroth watched his fleet being dismantled with horror. His mighty armada was being defeated by a single ancient ship with a crew of 3 humans. Warships that had conquered worlds were drifting helplessly in space. Their crews were alive, but their vessels were dead. "What is that thing?" Dreth asked from beside him. The young officer had been rescued from Pathfinder 1 hour ago and still looked shaken. "It is something humanity built long ago," Zoroth replied quietly. "Something they were afraid to use. Something they hid in the darkness, hoping it would never be found." The battle continued for another 20 minutes. Guardian moved through the Velori fleet with terrible efficiency. Ships fell by the dozens, then by the hundreds. The remaining vessels tried to retreat, but their hyperdrives failed before they could activate them. Guardian had already disabled them remotely. When the last warship went dark, Pathfinder 1 returned to the center of the debris field. 340 vessels floated lifelessly around it. Not a single one had escaped. The mightiest invasion fleet the Velori had ever assembled had been defeated in less than an hour. Danny released the breath he had been holding. His hands were shaking. He had just witnessed the most one-sided battle in galactic history. "Casualty report," he asked Guardian. "Enemy casualties stand at approximately 207 individuals. All deaths resulted from secondary explosions in engine compartments. I could not prevent these losses without allowing the vessels to continue attacking. I am sorry." 200 deaths out of nearly 1 million Velori soldiers. Guardian had kept its promise. It had won the battle while preserving almost every life. Lisa stared at the tactical display. "This is impossible. 1 ship against hundreds. And we won. We actually won. Pathfinder 1 was designed for this purpose," Guardian explained. "My creators believed humanity would face overwhelming odds when first contact occurred. They built me to ensure survival regardless of enemy numbers. Today I have fulfilled my primary function." Kira walked to the view screen and looked at the drifting fleet. Thousands of ships floated in silence. Their running lights were dark. Their weapons were cold. The greatest military power in the galaxy had been humbled by a prototype that humanity had built 7 centuries ago. "Why did they hide you?" she asked Guardian. "If you could do this, why did they not use you to protect humanity?" Guardian was silent for a long moment. When it spoke again, there was something almost sad in its voice. "Because my creators realized that I was too powerful. A weapon like me could protect humanity, but it could also corrupt humanity. They feared that possessing such power would change who humans were. They wanted humanity to grow beyond fear and violence. So they hid me away, hoping I would never be needed." Danny understood now. The people of the isolation era had built Guardian in their darkest hour. But they had also been wise enough to recognize the danger of their creation. They had chosen to hide their greatest weapon rather than become dependent on it. "They wanted us to be better," he said softly. "Yes," Guardian confirmed. "And from what I have observed, humanity has become better. You asked me to minimize casualties. You cared about enemy lives even when those enemies were trying to kill you. My creators would be proud." The communication system beeped. Commander Zoroth was requesting contact. Danny accepted the signal. The Valori commander appeared on screen. He looked exhausted and defeated. Behind him, his bridge crew sat in stunned silence. "Human ship," Zorath said slowly. "I wish to negotiate." Danny leaned forward in his chair. The battle was over. Now came the harder part, deciding what to do with victory. The Valori boarding party breached the airlock with confidence. They were soldiers of the greatest military empire in the galaxy. They had conquered 12 species and destroyed countless worlds. This ancient human vessel would be easy prey. Or so they believed. 40-7, Valori soldiers poured into the corridors of Pathfinder 1. They wore heavy combat armor and carried plasma rifles that could melt through steel. Their commander was a young officer named Dreth, who was eager to prove himself to Fleet Commander Zorath. Capturing this strange vessel would bring him glory and promotion. On the bridge, Danny watched the internal sensors with growing tension. He could see the Valori spreading through the ship. They moved with military precision and checked every room and corridor. Lisa tracked their progress on a tactical display, while Kira stayed close to the Guardian chamber. "Guardian," Danny said. "They are inside the ship. What do we do?" "I am aware of the intruders," Guardian replied calmly. 47 hostiles detected. They are carrying standard plasma weapons which cannot damage my internal systems. I recommend allowing them to advance to Section 7 before engaging. Danny did not understand the strategy, but he trusted the AI. Guardian had been designed by people who knew what they were doing. He nodded his agreement. The Valori soldiers reached Section 7. It was a long corridor with no cover and no visible defenses. Dreth ordered his troops to advance quickly. They had encountered no resistance, and he was becoming suspicious. The ship seemed empty, but sensors showed 3 humans on the bridge. Guardian activated the first defensive measure. The gravity in Section 7 suddenly increased to 10 times normal. Valori soldiers crashed to the floor under the crushing weight. Their armor groaned, and their weapons clattered uselessly against the metal deck. They could not move. They could barely breathe. Dreth managed to send a distress signal before his communicator was crushed by his own armored hand pressing against his chest. The message reached Fleet Commander Zorath on the flagship. Something was very wrong. Guardian reduced the gravity back to normal after 30 seconds. The Valori soldiers lay gasping on the floor. They were alive but completely disoriented. Before they could recover, the atmospheric systems activated. A colorless and odorless gas flooded the corridor. Within seconds, every Valori soldier was unconscious. Danny stared at the screen in amazement. "You knocked them all out, without killing any of them." "Correct," Guardian said. "My protocols prioritize incapacitation over termination." These soldiers were following orders. They do not deserve death for obeying their commanders. However, I will use lethal force if necessary to protect human life. Lisa shook her head slowly. The people who built this ship, they were terrified of aliens. But they still programmed mercy into their ultimate weapon. My creators understood that fear can make people do terrible things, Guardian explained. They built me to be powerful enough to destroy any threat. But they also wanted me to be wise enough to know when destruction was not necessary. Power without restraint is just another form of evil. Kira felt tears forming in her eyes. She had expected a monster. Instead, she had found something almost beautiful in its philosophy. The humans of the isolation era had faced their darkest fears and still chose to be better than those fears. Outside the ship, Fleet Commander Zorath watched the tactical display with growing concern. His boarding party had gone silent. Their life signs showed they were alive but unconscious. Something on that ancient vessel had defeated 47 trained soldiers. Without killing a single one, Zorath was a veteran of countless battles. He had destroyed civilizations and conquered worlds. but he had never encountered anything like this. The ship appeared primitive on the surface, but its capabilities were beyond anything in his experience. He opened a channel to the ancient vessel. Human ship. This is Fleet Commander Zorath of the Valori Empire. You have attacked my soldiers. Surrender immediately or face destruction. Guardian responded before Danny could speak. Fleet Commander Zorath. Your soldiers invaded this vessel without permission. They have been neutralized using non-lethal methods. They will regain consciousness in approximately 2 hours. I suggest you retrieve them and withdraw from this region. Zorath laughed. It was a cold and cruel sound. You dare to give orders to the Valori Empire? We have 340 warships. You have one ancient relic. The mathematics are simple. Mathematics can be deceiving, Guardian replied. I am transmitting a demonstration of my capabilities now. Please observe. The main weapon batteries of Pathfinder 1 came online. A beam of distorted light lanced out from the ship and struck the nearest Valori cruiser. The warship did not explode. Instead, it simply stopped. Every system aboard shut down simultaneously. The vessel drifted lifelessly in space. Its crew was alive, but the ship was completely dead. Zorath checked his sensors. The cruiser had lost all power. Engines and weapons and life support had all failed at the same moment. His technicians reported that the ship's power core had been permanently disabled. It would take months to repair. That was a single shot at minimal power, Guardian informed him. I am capable of disabling your entire fleet in approximately 4 minutes. I am also capable of destroying your entire fleet in approximately 90 seconds. I do not wish to do either. Please withdraw. The bridge of the Valori flagship fell silent. Every officer stared at the view screen showing the ancient human ship. It floated among the debris looking small and outdated. But they had all seen what it could do with a single shot. Danny stepped forward. Guardian, can we really take on all of them? Yes. Pathfinder 1 was designed to face armadas. 340 vessels is well within my operational parameters. However, I would prefer to avoid combat if possible. Destruction should always be the last option. Commander Zorath made his decision. He had not conquered 12 species by being foolish. A strategic withdrawal was not defeat. It was wisdom. But before he could give the order, his second-in-command pointed at the tactical display. More Valori ships were arriving. Reinforcements from the main invasion fleet. The numbers grew from 340 to 400 and then to 500. Zorath smiled. Perhaps mathematics would win after all. Human vessel, he said coldly. You may have impressive weapons, but we have numbers beyond counting. My full fleet will arrive within the hour. 10,000 warships. Can your ancient relic handle that? Guardian processed the information. 10,000 vessels will require adjustment to my tactical approach. Victory is still achievable. However, casualties will be significant on both sides. I repeat my request for withdrawal. This does not need to end in death. Zorath closed the channel. He had heard enough. The battle would begin soon, and he intended to win. Danny looked at his small crew. Lisa was pale with fear. Kira was trembling. They were 3 people on an ancient ship, facing the largest military empire in the galaxy. But they had Guardian. And Guardian had been built to protect humanity against exactly this kind of threat. The question was whether protection would require mercy or destruction. Danny hoped it would be mercy, but he was prepared for whatever came next. The bridge of Pathfinder 1 hummed with energy that had not flowed through its systems in 7 centuries. Danny watched the screens come alive with data and warnings and status reports that he could barely understand. The technology was ancient, but it looked more advanced than anything he had seen on Modern ships. Lisa worked frantically at the main console. She was trying to make sense of the controls, but everything was designed differently than the ship she knew. The language was English, but the terminology was strange. Words like probability, shields and gravity lances and temporal buffers appeared on the screens. Kira stood near the chamber marked Guardian. The glow had become brighter, and she could feel warmth radiating from the metal surface. Something was definitely inside. Something was waking up. Outside the ship, the Valori fleet had finished arriving. 340 warships formed a wall of purple armor and deadly weapons. Their scanners swept across the debris field, searching for anything of value or interest. It would not take them long to find Pathfinder 1. Danny moved to the captain's chair and sat down. The moment his body touched the seat, the chamber marked Guardian opened with a soft hiss. Light poured out, and a voice filled the bridge. It was calm and clear and sounded almost human. "Good morning. I am Guardian. Please state your authorization code." Danny froze. He had no authorization code. He was a salvage captain who had stumbled onto this ship by accident. He looked at Lisa, but she had no answer either. "I do not recognize your biosigns," Guardian continued. "You are not crew members of Pathfinder 1. However, my sensors indicate you are human. This is acceptable. How may I assist you?" Kira stepped forward. "What are you?" "I am an artificial intelligence designed by the United Earth Defense Council in the year 2153. My primary function is to protect humanity from existential threats. I have been in standby mode for 691 years. May I ask what the current date is?" Lisa told Guardian the year. The AI was silent for several seconds. When it spoke again, there was something almost sad in its voice. "I see. Much time has passed. My creators are long dead. But my purpose remains unchanged. I detect a significant threat in the surrounding space. 340 hostile vessels with weapons charged. Do you require assistance?" Danny finally found his voice. "Yes, we need help. Those ships belong to the Valori Empire. They have been conquering species across the galaxy. They will kill us if they find us." Guardian processed this information. "The Valori Empire is not in my database. However, their vessel configuration suggests advanced military capability. I am analyzing their weapons and shields now. Preliminary assessment indicates they pose minimal threat to this vessel." Lisa laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Minimal threat? There are 340 of them. This ship is 700 years old. Age is not relevant to capability," Guardian replied. Pathfinder 1 was designed to defend humanity against extinction-level threats. The Defense Council believed that first contact with alien species would likely be hostile. They built this vessel to ensure human survival regardless of the odds. Danny felt a chill run down his spine. He had heard rumors about the isolation era, but nobody talked about what humanity had actually built during those dark years. The fear of alien invasion had driven the governments of Earth to create weapons that could destroy entire civilizations. "What exactly can this ship do?" he asked. Guardian began listing capabilities. The power core used energy extraction from vacuum fluctuations, which provided essentially unlimited power. The hull was made of self-repairing smart metal that could absorb and redirect energy attacks. The weapon systems included gravity manipulation, beams that could crush ships from the inside, and probability disruptors that could cause enemy systems to fail spontaneously, and temporal stutters that could freeze targets in time for brief periods. Kira listened with growing horror. "This is a planet killer." "They built a planet killer?" "Correct," Guardian confirmed. Pathfinder 1 has the capability to sterilize planetary surfaces if necessary. This function has never been activated. I hope it never will be. Danny understood now why this ship had been hidden instead of destroyed. The leaders of that era could not bring themselves to destroy their greatest weapon, but they also could not allow it to exist openly. So they hid it in deep space and erased all records of its location. They hoped nobody would ever find it. The main view screen showed movement in the Valori fleet. Several smaller ships had broken formation and were heading toward the debris field. They were scouts. They would find Pathfinder 1 within minutes. Lisa checked the communication systems again. Still jammed. No signal could reach the Concorde. They were truly alone. "Guardian," Danny said slowly, "if we asked you to defend us, what would you do?" "I would protect you with all necessary force. However, I must inform you that my protocols include preservation of life whenever possible. I am designed to incapacitate rather than destroy, unless destruction is the only option. My creators wanted me to be a shield and not just a sword." This surprised Danny. He had expected a weapon of pure destruction. Instead, Guardian seemed almost gentle in its approach. The AI had been built during humanity's most fearful era, but its creators had still included mercy in its programming. The Valori scouts entered the debris field. Their scanners swept across the floating wreckage, getting closer to Pathfinder 1 with each pass. Danny knew they had only minutes before they were discovered. "Guardian," he said, "do you require authorization to activate defensive protocols?" "Yes. A human command is required to activate any offensive or defensive systems. This is a safety measure implemented by my creators. I cannot act without human permission." Danny looked at Lisa and Kira. They were afraid, but they trusted him. He was their captain. The decision was his to make. A Valori scout ship appeared on the view screen. It had found them. Its sensors locked on the Pathfinder 1 and began transmitting data back to the main fleet. In the distance, Danny could see the massive warships changing course. They were coming. "Guardian," Danny said with a steady voice, "I authorize defensive protocols." The bridge lights changed from white to soft blue. Every system in the ship came fully online for the first time in 700 years. Pathfinder 1 began to move on its own. The ancient prototype that humanity had built in fear was awake, and it was ready to protect its creators once again. Guardian spoke with calm certainty. "Authorization accepted. Defensive protocols are now active. I will keep you safe. Please remain on the bridge." The first Valori boarding craft attached to the hull 3 minutes later. Danny heard the sound of cutting tools trying to breach the airlock. The Valori had no idea what they were about to face. Neither did Danny, but he was about to find out. The salvage ship Long Haul drifted through the empty darkness of uncharted space. Danny Cole sat in the captain's chair and stared at the navigation screen with tired eyes. He had been a salvage captain for 12 years and had seen plenty of debris fields in his time. But the coordinates they received 3 days ago pointed to a region that no human ship had visited in centuries. Lisa Tran worked at the system's console behind him. Her fingers moved quickly across the controls as she tried to make sense of the scanner readings. She was the best system specialist Danny had ever worked with, and he trusted her judgment completely. In the corner of the bridge sat Kira Webb. She was only 26 years old, and this was her first deep space mission. Her eyes were wide with a mixture of excitement and fear as she watched the senior crew members work. The year was 2847, and humanity had come a long way since leaving Earth. They had joined the Galactic Concorde almost 400 years ago and now lived alongside 200 other spacefaring species. Humans had advanced ships and powerful weapons and colonies across dozens of star systems. But their early prototype vessels from the pioneering days have been abandoned in deep space graveyards and forgotten by everyone except historians and salvage. Crews looking for rare metals. Danny leaned forward as the scanner finally picked up something solid. A massive shape appeared on the screen, and it was surrounded by smaller pieces of floating debris. The ship was old, very old. Its design matched nothing in the modern registry, but there was something familiar about its shape. Lisa pulled up the historical database and ran a comparison. Her face went pale when the results came back. "Danny," she said quietly, "this is Pathfinder 1. Danny stood up so fast that his chair rolled backward and hit the wall. Pathfinder 1 was humanity's first interstellar prototype. It had been launched in 2156 during the Isolation Era, when Earth was still alone in the universe and terrified of what might be waiting in the stars. The ship had disappeared during its test flight and was officially declared destroyed. Every historian agreed on this fact. The ship was gone forever, but here it was, floating in the darkness like a ghost that refused to die. Kira walked over to look at the screen. She had studied the Isolation Era in school, but the details were always vague. That period of human history was not something people liked to talk about. It was a time of fear and paranoia when humanity believed that aliens would eventually find Earth and try to destroy it. The governments of that era had built weapons and ships designed for one purpose only: survival at any cost. How is it still intact? Kira asked. It should have fallen apart centuries ago. Lisa shook her head. The hull composition is wrong. This metal should not exist. The energy readings make no sense either. There is something inside that ship, and it is still running on minimal power. Danny made a decision. Pathfinder 1 was worth more than anything they had ever salvaged. Museums and collectors would pay fortunes for pieces of this ship. He ordered Lisa to bring Long Haul alongside the ancient vessel and prepare for a boarding operation. It took them an hour to match speed and position with the prototype. Up close, the ship was even more impressive. It was larger than Danny had expected, and its hull showed no signs of damage or decay. The metal seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. There were no windows and no visible weapons, but something about the design made Danny feel uneasy. Lisa found an airlock on the port side and connected their boarding tube. The seal was perfect, despite the age difference between the two ships. Danny grabbed his scanner and headed for the tube, with Lisa and Kira following close behind. The interior of Pathfinder 1 was dark and cold. Emergency lights flickered on as they walked through the corridors. The air was stale but breathable. Someone had designed this ship to last forever. They found the bridge after 10 minutes of searching. It was smaller than Danny expected, but every surface was covered with controls and screens. Lisa immediately went to work on the main console while Danny examined the captain's chair. There was a small plaque attached to the armrest. It read, "For the protection of Earth and all her children." Kira found something strange in the corner of the bridge. It was a sealed chamber with a single word printed on its surface: Guardian. She called the others over, and they stared at the chamber in confusion. There was no record of any system called Guardian in the historical files. Lisa connected her portable unit to the main console and began downloading data. The files were encrypted with security protocols that should not have existed in 2156. Someone had gone to great lengths to keep the contents of this ship secret. A binge. Sudden alarm blared through the bridge. Red lights flashed and every screen came to life at once. Danny grabbed Lisa and pulled her away from the console. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. The main view screen activated and showed the space outside the ship. Long Haul floated nearby, but that was not what caught their attention. Behind their salvage vessel, a massive fleet of warships was dropping out of hyperspace. Dozens of them at first, then hundreds. The ships were covered in dark purple armor, and their weapons were already charging. Danny recognized the design immediately. Valori, The Valori Empire had been conquering species on the far side of the galaxy for decades. They had destroyed 12 civilizations in the past 10 years and showed no signs of stopping. The Galactic Concord had been preparing for an eventual war, but nobody expected the Valori to strike this deep into neutral space. Lisa tried to send a distress signal, but static filled the communication channels. The Valori were jamming everything. No message could reach Earth or any Concord outpost. They were alone with an ancient prototype and a fleet of 340 warships that wanted them dead. Kira looked at Danny with fear in her eyes. She was too young to die in an uncharted debris field. They all were. Danny looked around the bridge of Pathfinder 1. The ship was old, but it was still running. Its systems were coming online one by one, as if sensing the danger outside. The chamber-marked Guardian began to hum with energy. He had two choices. They could run back to Long Haul and try to escape in a ship that had no weapons and no speed. Or they could stay here on this ancient prototype and hope that whatever secrets it contained might save their lives. Danny made his choice. "Seal the airlock," he told Lisa. "We are staying here." Lisa nodded and sent the command. The boarding tube disconnected and Longhaul drifted away. They were now trapped on a ship they did not understand, with an enemy fleet closing in from all directions. The chamber-marked Guardian began to glow brighter. Something inside was waking up. Something that had been sleeping for 700 years. Danny did not know if that was a good thing or a very bad thing. But he was about to find out.